Welcome, everybody, to the very first episode of Airtime, a conversation with aviation professionals. I am Preston Holland with Prestige Aircraft Finance. I am a proud GLADA member, and when Christine asked me to host a podcast style, kind of looking towards doing some webinars that were not boring. I hate boring webinars, so hopefully this is not boring. A topic that a lot of people are curious about is aviation insurance. And there's a few things that are going on in the landscape right now that I think are interesting to talk about. And as we think about what does that mean for buyers and sellers and operators, hopefully this conversation is useful for you. So first up, we have Shannon Hope. Shannon is a broker, a finance, or not finance broker, sorry, that's what I do, is a insurance broker. And so we are pleased to welcome to the stream Shannon Hope. Shannon, welcome to Airtime.
Thanks, Preston. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. So like I said in the intro, not boring. That's the whole point of this, is to not be a boring webinar. So excited. I know you and I have spoken a few times in the past, and it's never been boring. So have been excited to get to talk to you. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Who do you work for? Where do you live? All that kind of stuff.
Sure. So again, Shannon Hope. Kassel Aviation Insurance. I'm a third generation aviation insurance broker and pilot. Been in the business for a little over 21 years. We specialize in corporate and commercial aviation. Don't really do any of the single engine or twin engine piston stuff. A lot of that has just gone towards an automated underwriting approach where you literally just plug numbers into a website and it spits out a quote. We do things the old-fashioned way, and so we just focus on that segment. And hail from Columbia, South Carolina.
Columbia, South Carolina. That is a beautiful part of the world in the Southeast. So Shannon, tell me a little bit. I am a novice in aviation insurance. So talk to me the difference between a broker and an underwriter, right? So you're the broker, you're actually on the client facing side. Sure. What is it from a function standpoint that aircraft insurance broker does?
So the aviation insurance broker is the intermediary between the client or the policyholder and the insurance companies. So the underwriter is the representative for the insurance company. The broker is the representative for the client. So it's our job to evaluate risks, seek out quotes from the underwriters, negotiate those quotes, and then ultimately place the insurance policy or policies for the client to meet their needs.
Yeah, very cool. So walk me through, can I just call the underwriter directly, or do I have to go through you? Is it a situation where I could go direct? Like, I think of Geico, right? When I think of my car, if I call Geico, I feel like I'm probably talking to the lizard directly. Like in aviation, is it possible to do that?
Yeah, great question. So all of the aviation insurance companies, when we're talking about turbine aircraft, there's one exception in the piston realm, but all of your turbine aircraft companies use the broker system. So essentially, the broker is the sponge that gets all the information that the insurance company needs to make a decision on any particular event that happens or any problem that's brought to the table. Otherwise, it would just turn into a really long game of ping pong with the client. So our job is kind of to screen everything for the underwriter, gather all the information they need so they can make a quick and decisive decision. Obviously, we try to get the information that's going to benefit our client to the most. In my experience, if you have a lot of back and forth with an underwriter, the chances of just getting a no increase if you can pitch it into a way that makes sense to them logically and give them an easy path to a yes. It generally works out a lot better that way. But no, you can't call the underwriters directly. They'll just refer you to the broker politely and say, no, we're the insurance company. You've got to call your broker. Here's his number.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. One thing that I think a lot of people don't understand. So I am, when I think about how I am buying my car insurance, for instance, right? Like I have a broker of record here at my local office. And if I wanted to change tomorrow, I could make a phone call and I could change. Walk me through kind of how that works.
Sure. So the home and auto world is a lot different than the aviation world. The same dynamics exist, but it's so different because of the sheer size and scope of the home and auto industry. Home and auto, you're talking hundreds of companies, literally hundreds of companies that operate in the United States offer that product. So you can call 7 different brokers and get 7 different quotes because of just the sheer volume of markets that are available out there. In aviation, particularly in turbine aircraft, I mean, you're dealing with a dozen or less markets depending on what you need that have the capacity and the capability to write that policy for you. Any broker that's worth their salt is going to be appointed with all of these insurance companies. So it's really counterproductive to call 7 different brokers and try to get 7 different quotes because there's only a dozen or so places to go. The insurance company,
Let's double click on that. So there's 12 actual risk holder, around 12, maybe 13, maybe 11 for turbine aircraft. So we're not talking about there's not 120 different people who would buy this. So what does that mean for, there's 12. Do I qualify for 1 or do I qualify for 4 or do you take it to 7? Like how does that work on your side?
It depends. So obviously, if we have insurance company X, let's say W. Brown, for example, and we've got a G650 at a 70 million hull, 300 million liability. W. Brown can write some of the lower end aircraft. If you've got a King Air or something with like a $2 million insured value, $5 million limit of liability, they can do that all day long. But on a G650, they will not have the capability to write that. So it would be exercise in futility to send that into the W. Brown underwriting team for review and quote. So it really just depends on the risk, the limits involved, if it's being operated single pilot, if it's being used for charter, really just the whole picture on where that's going to go and who it needs to go to.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Talk to us about the current landscape of insurance underwriters. You said there's 11 or 12. Walk me through, is there some that have gotten in recently? Are there some that have left recently? Like where are we sitting kind of in that spectrum right now?
Great question. So we haven't had any departures from the aviation insurance market in quite some time. About 8-9 years ago, there was a shift where several aviation insurance companies just cut and left. They weren't making money. They were getting hit with bad losses. It wasn't profitable. So if a business isn't profitable for an insurance company, they usually shutter that division. That led to a cycle called the hard market where rates went up and up and up. Lately, they've leveled off, and now we're seeing, in some cases, worst case is going to be flat. Obviously, if you've had a really bad loss or there's some, quote unquote hair, you might not see a flat increase. But some people are seeing single digit to double digit, low double digit decreases on insurance. The entrant of several new aviation insurance companies. As a new entrant, you're not going to pick up market share by doing the same thing, offering the same product at the same price. You've got to do something different. So the competitive nature of that environment is causing, obviously, the newer entrants to attempt to buy clients at a lower price. And then the legacy carriers that were in the market prior to the entrants coming in are having to respond in kind so they don't lose market share. So that's the current dynamic. But that being said, I don't think it's going to last. Reason being, there's been a spate of really bad losses in the aviation sector, as I'm sure you may have heard. Over 13 total losses on GA turbine aircraft, and I'm not talking about piston aircraft, I'm talking about turbine, fixed wing, and rotor wing. Over 13 losses this year so far with 52 fatalities. Not only are the airplanes expensive, but really the big kicker from an insurance perspective is the lives lost.
And is that domestic only? Is that U.S. based only?
Domestic, U.S. only.
Does domestic markets play in? Do international and domestic markets exist separately, or does a accident that happens in Europe affect my rate here in the United States? If let's say I fly a Challenger 300 and there's a Challenger 300 incident in Italy, is that affecting my rate here in the States?
Sure. So great question. Yes, it can. Reason being is insurance companies often operate in multiple countries. For instance, we had the Boeing 737 MAX 8 losses. That had a trickle down effect, even though that was an airline sector loss into the GA market. A lot of the insurance companies have different product lines, so natural disasters can have an impact on aviation rates. Really, everything's interconnected, but mostly where the international market comes into play, and I'm glad you brought that up. The Russia confiscation of the leased aircraft from the European leasing markets has just hit over $4 billion in payouts, and that is affecting reinsurance. Reinsurance is the insurance company's insurance. If the insurance companies had to literally pay out every loss that hit their books, they would go bankrupt really quick. So they have that farmed out to reinsurance companies, where if they take a loss at a certain level, the reinsurance company comes in and pays it. So those types of losses are really affecting the reinsurance market. When the reinsurance market rates are raised for insurance companies, those are going to have a trickle-down effect at the end consumer. So yeah, to answer your question, there is certain degrees of interconnectedness within the global market.
Gotcha. No, that's super interesting. Shannon, I think one thing, if you had to have a crystal ball and look at what the next 12 months looks like, what does that look like in kind of the looking at those 12 different people? 12 months from now, am I paying more or less than I am today?
I would say, given the losses and the clip and the pace at which these are occurring, I would predict you'd be lucky to get a decrease in the coming year. I think you'll see more of a leveling of rates. If you're, again, lucky, you might see a smidge of a decrease, but with the losses that are hitting the books, the impending lawsuits that are sure to come, and those court battles, which are resulting in astronomical payouts due to social inflation for the insurance companies, I would predict leveling.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, speaking of aviation underwriters, I want to welcome Doug Tibbs into the webinar. Doug Tibbs is an underwriter himself, and let me take off the awkward screen that is covering up his face. So Doug, welcome to Airtime. We are so excited to hear from the man himself, who is looking at your rates and telling you how much it's going to cost. Doug, welcome to the show. Uh-oh, we don't have Doug's audio.
I'm here.
There he is. He's back.
Just hiding the noise, that's all.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, this is a non-boring webinar, and non-boring webinars include avoiding the noise. So, Doug, welcome to the show. Doug and Shannon work together. Doug, can you give us a little bit of a background on who you are and what you do?
Sure. I've been in the aviation insurance industry for about 23 years. I was a professional pilot before then. I've been flying airplanes and around airplanes since I was 14 years old. Traveled and flown all around the world, navigated the globe about 8 times, and really just enjoy aviation in general. Insurance is just the side piece to it.
Very cool. And which insurance underwriter do you work with right now, Doug?
Sure. So I'm working with AXXL. I'm the head of general aviation in the United States. And we've got offices in Boston, New York, Chicago, and San Francisco.
Very cool. I want to talk, while we have Shannon here still, I want to talk about the interplay between an underwriter and a broker. So me as the customer, and maybe me as the charter operator, or me as the flyer, me as the dealer, I deal with Shannon and I say, hey, I need insurance for XYZ aircraft. I'm going to fly it in XYZ way. And then Shannon comes back and says, this is how much it's going to cost. And I think, wow, that was magic. That was incredible. He must have thrown that into a giant AI and then it spit out a price. And, that was that, right? Talk to me about the relationship between the underwriter and the broker and how much kind of back and forth and relationship, and then who has autonomy to kind of do what. Walk me through that. And Shannon, feel free to jump in.
Sure. No, aviation insurance is very different than any other insurance out there. Particularly, we get classified sort of like a car insurance provider or a boat insurance provider, where, to your point, it's just sort of system generated, right? And that's just not how aviation insurance works today. As Shannon provided, the broker is sort of the liaison between the aircraft owner or operator and us, the insurance company. And so the broker's job is to, and kind of the easiest way I put it is, if you have to go to court, you're going to use an attorney to help you represent you to the judge or the jury. Shannon's sort of the attorney in the process, and I'm the judge of the jury. And his job is to help provide as much information as possible about his client, then to bring it to me to make me want to write that account, and at the best price, the best coverages, the terms and conditions are all exceeding others. It's a very important relationship because as an aviation insurance company, particularly here at AXXL, each one of our underwriters could receive over 2,000 submissions a year.
Wow. That's a lot.
It's a lot. And it's not all within our appetite, right? So what the broker needs to do is kind of create and sell us on why that client fits in our appetite and why we want to underwrite it. And there's a lot of factors in that. And underwriting in aviation today, and it might change, but today it's still very much a hands-on, based on experience of the underwriter specifically, based on the experiences our company has had or the industry has had. And so we use a lot of models and data, but a lot of it can still be a gut decision from an underwriter. And so the relationship for the broker to help educate the value of the client and what they're doing above and beyond others is super important.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. Shannon, walk me through, you are reaching out to somebody like Doug and you are saying, hey, this is what I want. This is kind of what I need. Walk me through kind of that process. Are you picking up the phone and calling Doug and saying, hey, Doug, I got this deal for you.
Yeah,
take a look at it?
So the first thing that we're doing is putting together a marketing packet called a submission. That is our sales packet that we take to underwriters to sell the risk. So to sum it up, we ask a ton of questions to ferret out risk exposures that the insured might not be aware of because, like anybody else, they're not insurance experts. We are. So it's our job to pry and prod and get all of the I's dotted and T's crossed. From a simple standpoint, that might be asking about where the aircraft is traveling to make sure that the coverage territory of the policy marries with their exposure, or it could be looking at contracts to make sure that everything's in compliance from an insurance perspective. So we'll take that to Doug. I'll give him a call and say, hey, here's a risk. Here are the reasons why I think you should write it, whether it's, hey, great operator, no losses, SBO stage 2 registration. They're operating newer equipment with underwriters like it's pro-flown. Everybody's doing training every 6 months. All of the factors that I think and he would think would make it a good risk. So the last thing that I want to do is waste an underwriter's time. If you develop a reputation for wasting time, you're not going to get a lot of your submissions looked at, and they're certainly not going to be looked at with any degree of seriousness. So that's my take on it.
Yeah. Doug, walk me through what makes, I want to hear this perspective from Doug. And so, Shannon, I hope that the answer is positive. I would imagine that it is, but we'll see. Doug, what qualifies a good broker, and then what qualifies a bad broker? Obviously, kind of baseline is they don't bring you piston deals. Like if you're not in the piston world, they're not bringing you piston deals. I think that's kind of like, number one. But when you think about what makes a good insurance broker that you want to work with, and then what are the downstream effects of working with a good broker versus a bad broker? Are they rising to the top? Am I getting a better rate? Am I getting an answer? Or do you have brokers that are on like do not answer the phone list? Like walk me through how you look out, because Shannon is awesome and he's a great friend, but he's one of many insurance brokers in aviation. How do you think about kind of the global view of different insurance brokers?
Sure. And I can speak openly about this because I was a broker for about 12 years. So I've seen both sides of it, both the good and the bad, right? And what makes a great broker, number one, is they get to know their client. And you can only represent them to the insurance companies if they fully understand the operation. And that's one of the biggest struggles we have today is just the lack of information. So as an underwriter, if I get 2,000 or so submissions a year, I am going to look for the submissions that provide the most information. That way, I then don't have to go back to the broker, waste time asking questions in hopes that the broker even gathers that additional information to come back to me. I'm just going to decline it and move on to the next one. So a good broker is going to work with their client to understand the ins and outs of their operation, what they're doing right, and are there areas where they can assist them. Good brokers will pick up the phone and call. They don't just hide behind email. They will get to know the appetite of the underwriting community. Generally speaking, if a broker is talking to a client and once they learn about them, they should know the 2 or 3 markets that are going to be the best fit for that company. Whether they need an underwriter that's super responsive, it can provide a high level of service. Maybe they offer a better ancillary coverage package for that type of program, or maybe they just have additional safety services that the client needs that they know 1 or 2 companies can provide. So knowledge is power. Good brokers will get to know their clients. They have built relationship with the underwriters, which people might be surprised, but this is still very much a relationship business. If I have a broker that I trust, who gathers the information, who's honest about the information, and over years we've built the relationship, if they call at night or on the weekends or on Christmas, I'm answering the phone. I'm answering the emails. We're taking care of the client. There are certainly brokers out there that are not communicative. They provide limited information, and those folks, unfortunately, are not going to get the service. They're not going to get the best rates or the best coverages. There's a lot of brokers, and we're going to feed those that take care of us, that trade properly, and give the information that we need in order to do our job.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Doug, I think that piece coming from an underwriter is so key, because I actually don't think I've ever heard an underwriter publicly say how to pick a good broker. Shannon, here's a little bit of, let's try and not be self-promoting here. I hate webinars where it's like, look at how great I am. It's amazing, right? This is not an infotainment commercial. So just set the boundary. But for you as a broker, how do you think about, how do you set yourself apart from these other brokers that Doug had mentioned that are not going to get the phone call? Like how do you strategically do that? And maybe, if somebody was trying to evaluate the good brokers from the bad brokers, it's an industry that's very tight knit and small. There are other good insurance brokers that are out there, but how do you think about proactive steps that you can take inside of your business to make sure that you are a good insurance broker?
Sure. So, good question. And first of all, let's be honest, we are not going to be a good fit for everybody. We are just not going to be a good fit for everybody out there. We tend to pair well with people that see insurance as an important part of their business strategy, an important part to protect the brand and the assets that they have. And also, people, a lot of our clients want somebody in their corner to be their quote unquote risk manager. A lot of the businesses that we're dealing with certainly have some corporate clients that have full-time risk management on staff. We interface with those folks fairly frequently. But a lot of our clients are charter companies or large flight schools or helicopter operators that don't have an insurance risk management person on staff. So they look to us as their partner to be that in-house counsel and that resource for them. So the people that dismiss insurance, that just want a low price, that think insurance is a racket, we really don't tend to pair well with those people. So for me, it's just really working with like-minded people who are going to appreciate the services that you provide. And again, that's not going to be everybody.
Yeah, I think that's super. It's an interesting, turning down business is usually the sign of actually a good broker. Someone who says, "Hey, I'm just not the right fit for you," is actually, ironically, a sign that they're actually good. Well, Shannon, thanks so much for coming on. I know that we had kind of set your time slot. We've already taken probably 10 minutes more of your time than you had originally allotted to us. Shannon, real quick before you go. Where can people find you? Where can people find out more about your business? Where can they reach out to you? Are you a LinkedIn guy? Are you a Facebook guy? How can people reach out to you?
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me. LinkedIn, Shannon Hope, Hope, Kassel Aviation, spell weird, Kassel, Kassel Aviation. So thank you for having me on. I had a great time and appreciate you putting this together, Preston.
Absolutely, Shannon. Thanks for joining the Not Boring webinar, and I'm sure that we'll have you back on when we talk about something else that also is not boring. So talk to you, and thanks, Shannon.
Perfect. Take care.
All right, see ya. Doug, I think one question that is relevant to both operators, brokers, dealers, individual owners is, how the heck are you looking at my airplane? Like, break it down for me in a very simplistic way. I own a super mid aircraft. How exactly are you breaking down kind of the individual factors, and then maybe how much weight, like age, for instance, or pro pilot, or 135 versus 91? Like, there's so many different factors that go into this. Can you break it down for me? Because I'm not very smart and I don't really understand how your world works. Can you break it down for me pretty simply?
Simple is going to be tough, but I'll give it a go. So it's not easy. It's harder than you think, just because there's so many factors related to underwriting particular risks. And that's why having as much information about a particular operation is so important. The thing for people to understand is underwriters are looking at a piece of paper that is explaining how a company operates their aircraft. With little information creates mind judgment, and it's not always going to be towards the positive. So, the brokers, we hope, and many do, will present a case to us that outlines what companies are doing above and beyond. So when we receive a submission, one of the first things I'm going to look at, and in about 2 to 3 minutes, I'll have a general understanding of whether or not I'm going to immediately decline a risk, or if I want to continue investigating it further. Some of the key components that I'm going to look at is the type of aircraft. I'm going to look at, how is it crewed? Is it single pilot? Is it 2 crew? Is it owners? Is it pros? What is the aircraft being used for? I'm going to look at the address. Where's the aircraft based? And then lastly, I'm going to look at the hull value, the liability limits, and the claim history. Those components right there, just on a surface level, is going to tell me whether or not that particular account is in our appetite at the moment. From there, we really get into the deeper dive. We start looking at pilots. We're going to look at the age of the pilots, which we'll hopefully talk about later. We're going to look at the training that they're doing for that specific airplane. We're going to look at their operational profile. Where are they flying to? Are they going into Aspen every day, or are they going into Wichita, Kansas? Are they located in geographical areas that are known for natural catastrophic losses, nat cat losses? Are we now worried about potential claims with hail, wind, tornado, hurricanes? We'll get into operating overseas. Are they in Africa? Are they in the Middle East? And then we really get into ownership structure. Who owns the airplane? What businesses are they in? So we really try to uncover as much information as possible about the particular risk. And it's almost like a box checking exercise from the top down. If you ever get to a point where you're uncomfortable with something, maybe it's question mark on pilots and training, that's when we're going to have to either make a decision on to go back to the broker, ask some more questions, or if we're uncomfortable, we simply decline and move on to the next one because we have so many submissions to look at. So, I'm going to say this a lot during this call, that the power of information, and the more the better, is true. If you're going to sit there and think that the underwriter is going to give you a positive terms and conditions offer with limited information, it's just not the case. We get audited. We have eyes on us. In the event of a loss, I have to explain why I wrote the account, the pros and the cons. So we're all held accountable, and we need to provide as much information as possible to really give a good quote. And that's not always about rates. It could be flexibility with pilot warranties. It could be broader ancillary coverages. It could be flexibility on pilot training. All of that comes into play. But one of the challenges that we face is, there's a variety of different types of aircraft out there, and some have a good reputation, some don't have a good reputation. So we obviously use the power of data to understand where we're seeing losses in certain categories of aircraft. We even get as granular as certain ages of pilots, certain qualifications of pilots. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of detail that goes into the underwriting. It's not always the napkin at the bar type approach, which we've all done, and it has been that way. But nowadays, with the technology that we have and the data, it's gotten a much deeper underwriting process.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Let's talk about age of aircraft, because I think this is a webinar for GLADA, which is a dealer and brokerage association. So I think that it's important for our members and for other people in the industry to understand, when they're coaching clients, like, how does age play into this? Is it, if you're looking at a 20-year-old King Air versus like a brand new Citation, are you giving preferential pricing, risk pricing, approval status? Like, how are you thinking about age when you're doing your underwriting?
Sure. So age can be a factor, for sure, for a couple of reasons. One, you've got the General Aviation Revitalization Act, or GARA Act, which is going to protect the manufacturers from injury or damage due to product defect. So if an aircraft's over, I think, 18 years old, we can no longer then go after the manufacturers. So that comes into play with some aircraft, which sadly nowadays it's early 2000s, right? Which is just wild to think about. That's not that old.
Really quick, I want to double click on something because I don't want to miss it. I don't want to brush over it. You said 18 years is the cutoff for that.
I believe for the GARA Act, it's 18 years. So aircraft over the age of 18 protects the manufacturers from product defect.
Gotcha. Okay. So does that increase the risk premium when you are thinking about pricing?
It certainly can. One of the areas where I think the underwriting community doesn't necessarily do a very good job, but we're trying to get better, is when you look at the age of aircraft, there's more to it than just a stamp on the aircraft of the age. If you've got a 20-year-old airplane, avionics put into it, and it's got overhauled or upgraded engines, I personally look at that differently from an underwriting standpoint. I'm not necessarily going to classify that as an older aircraft, especially if it's got low cycles on the airframe. So, yes, age comes into play, but this is where the power of information from the client and the broker also helps the underwriter's decision. If I receive a submission and let's say it's a 20-year-old King Air, and they haven't told me that there's new G1000 Garmin avionics installed and they added the Black Hawk engine upgrade, I'm going to look at that as an older aircraft. If they come to me and say, yes, it's 20 years old, however, we've updated the avionics and we've got brand new engines on it, for me, that's a different conversation, and I'm going to quote that differently. I'm going to look at that differently. So again, the power of information, right? When I compare an older King Air, say 20-year-old King Air, to say a new Citation, if I have not been told that that King Air has had any upgrades, I am going to quote it differently. The older King Air is going to get a higher hull rate, so they're going to pay more money based on the value of the aircraft, and they're likely going to have some deductibles associated because the repairability costs are going to be higher. We're going to have limited part capacity potentially, and just overall general maintenance and fixing of the aircraft, if we have to unzip it to rebuild it, is going to cost us more money. And so inherently, it's going to be a higher premium than the newer aircraft, where one would expect you have up-to-date avionics, you've got parts availability, we've got easier engineering if we've got to rebuild the aircraft. And so those are conversations in our mind that comes into play when we're looking at older aircraft. How have they been maintained? And more importantly, have they had upgrades?
Yeah, that's incredibly interesting. I learned something new today. I had no idea that was kind of the thought process that goes into age of the aircraft. For those people that don't know, I work in the aviation finance industry, and so for people like myself, we have we end up interfacing a lot with insurance and about loss payee and things like that. And so understanding how that kind of plays in, it similarly in finance, there is, if you don't let the underwriter of the asset know that, hey, there is all these upgrades, and yes, it is an older King Air, but we all know that King Airs will fly for a really long time, especially if you do the Black Hawk upgrades and the G1000, right? The hull itself is, pretty rigid and can last for a long time. So insurance is the same way, right? So it's important to have people who understand the aircraft and understand what's going on, and then can
us with, hey, we painted it, we got new interior. Well, that's fantastic. Congratulations, right? But the meat of what I'm looking at from a risk standpoint is more avionics and engine driven, because we've had some people that are, very much pressing, hey, new interior, new paint. I bet it looks beautiful. And I'm very, very happy for you. But from a risk standpoint, that's not as much as what we want, probably similar to your finance side of things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's what is the upgrades that are making the sales purchase higher versus what are the upgrades that are actually making the underlying residual value and the risk value different, right? Those are two different things. We talked about age, and I want to double click on age. We talked about age of aircraft. Let's talk about age of pilots. Sure. This is a really hot topic, especially in the owner-flown turbine world. Yes. Dick Carl, who has written for a long time for Flying Magazine and a couple of other publications, complains about his insurance all the time. It seems like in every media magazine that you pick up, it's somebody complaining about being too old for their King Air or for their TBM or for their Premier or for their Citation jet. Let's talk about pilot age and how are underwriters thinking about that now, especially for kind of the high performance underflown folks.
Absolutely. And it's a hot topic, right? Because with the baby boomers, right, we're at a point now where they're starting to get to that threshold age. But let's talk two-part. Let's change it up a little bit. Let's talk young and old. So for example, when I was 21 years old, I was flying a Cheyenne 2XL for a corporation in south side of Chicago. And it was a great opportunity. However, one of our competitors on the airfield that also had a Cheyenne 2XL also had a couple jets. And eventually, as a young pilot. You wanted to get into that jet world. And so I applied for an open position. And I had just gotten back from recurrent training 2 weeks prior and had a great relationship with the team. They wanted to hire me. I filled out a pilot history form. They submitted it to their insurance company, and I was declined. And come to find out, the reason why I was declined, not because of qualifications, but because of my young age. The underwriter, who that company is still in business today, declined me because at the time he had a 21-year-old son, and he couldn't fathom his son flying a Cheyenne with corporate people in the back responsibly. And so he declined my offer. So I've been a byproduct of the age thing. So I get it. I'm sensitive to it. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. We don't often see the young ages coming into play. We're seeing it mostly in the older folks. And again, the baby boomer time. So right now, the threshold of conversation typically applies when you're 70 and over. Now, there are circumstances to that. So are you operating single pilot, or are you operating two crew? And then breaking it down even further, are you operating two crew PIC or SIC? Because that matters as you get deeper into the 70s. Now, every insurance company has their own likes and dislikes of age, and everyone has their own procedures and approach to it. No two risks are the same. No two scenarios are going to be the same. And it could be judgment based on aircraft. It could be judgment based on how much they're flying, their qualifications, etc. So generally speaking, over 70, it's the cognitive concern, right? So when you are making decisions at a fast pace and in a stressful environment, data tells that the reaction time is not the same. And so that, from an insurance standpoint, becomes the concern. So once you get over 70, conversations with the insurance company about, okay, how much longer do you plan on flying, right? If you're single pilot, once you get over 70 to 72, now there's an introduction of maybe it's time you have a co-pilot with you, a qualified and competent co-pilot sitting next to you. And if we can come to an agreement on that, let's work together for another couple of years. Let's see how you're feeling. Let's see how your interests are. Do you start phasing out of flying as much? But let's create a solution together.
That's super interesting. I think that that topic and conversation, especially even chief pilots, right? So yes. I have a client who their chief pilot aged out from their insurance standpoint, and their interesting next move was actually go fractional. So they said, we don't want to do this again. We're kind of at the tail end of our ownership. I mean, I don't think I wouldn't say that it's like a tailwind or a headwind to aircraft purchases, but it is a factor that people have to think. I want to bring on Phil Jordan, and Doug, I'd like you to stick around for a moment just so that because I think that there's some interesting concepts as we think about how it works for actual brokers and dealers and things like that. But I want to bring on Phil Jordan. Phil is with Central Flying Services. Phil has a unique background in that he is currently on the transaction side. He was previously an insurance broker. He's a legend in the industry. If you don't know Phil, he is a fantastic human being and incredibly smart and generous with his time. Phil, thanks for coming on. Welcome to Airtime.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
So, Phil, I want to talk about, and while we have Doug here, I want to talk about inventorying airplanes, and from a dealer broker perspective, but maybe kind of an interplay here between you and Doug. How are you thinking? Like, you take in an inventory airplane and everybody wants you to not fly it, right? They're like, we want this on the ground in a hangar, like don't do anything to it. If you're taking an airplane in, maybe you're a dealer and you have it in your possession and you have to have insurance on it or things like that for kind of that ecosystem of the world. How are you guys thinking of that? And Doug, maybe Phil, how are you thinking about that with your background in insurance? Maybe a little bit differently, maybe than some of the rest of our friends.
These guys have they don't like us flying them because when you fly it on a short period of time, your risk of loss goes up a lot more for a short period of time. So there's not that year to spread it out on. You get a very small premium on it. The fact that it helps us because we have a flight school, and by having a flight school, we have those in several other airplanes that we have in our fleet that we spread that risk over. So it helps the underwriter out just a little bit. But we do recognize that because we do recognize the need to be able to keep that airplane in the air, especially a turbine airplane. Is they're built to fly, they're not built to sit. So we like to keep them activated every month.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Doug, when you get a request for an airplane that's going to be owned by,
Did we lose you?
oh, can you hear me? Are we all here?
Yep.
All right, sweet. Yeah. So Doug,
Preston?
when you have,
Doug?
I think, I'm not sure can you hear it? I guess you might not be able to hear us, Phil. We'll see if Phil's got his technology going. Doug, when there's an inventory airplane that's coming across your desk, walk me through how you're thinking about that.
It's a good question. We do quite a few aircraft sales organizations, and when we look to partner with one, some of the things that we're looking at is the type of inventory. For us at XXL, we're not necessarily looking for the piston sales organizations, more of a turbine focused company. The main thing for underwriters, where it's my company or another company that you're looking at, is one, where's the aircraft going to be parked? Is it going to be inside or outside a hangar? And is it going to be in an area where that aircraft is going to be available and open to weather issues, whether that be hailstorms, lightning storms, wind, tornado, hurricanes? Where's the airplane going to be parked? Because that's an immediate concern, because from an underwriting standpoint, we know that these aircraft are not flying a lot, nor do you expect them to. So where's our exposure where that aircraft is sitting on the ground? That's part one. Part two is who's flying the aircraft and what are their qualifications and when have they been trained in that aircraft in the last 12 or 24 months. That's a concern because a lot of aircraft sales organizations will use contract pilots to do the demo flights or to reposition the aircraft for the sale. And so understanding the type of pilots that they're putting in there from a qualification and training standpoint is probably the biggest one from an insurance company standpoint.
Yeah, no, I think that's very interesting. Doug, this has been really great having you on Airtime. I think that it is a incredibly interesting thing to see inside the mind of an underwriter. I would say, where can people find out more about you? But frankly, I don't think you want them calling you. You probably want them calling someone like Shannon. Yeah. But if somebody does want to have maybe a question or two, where can they find out more information about you?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn under Doug Tibbs, TIBBS, or you can email me at doug.tibbs, TIBBS, at axaxl.com.
That is a mouthful of a domain name, but we will link that information in the replay of the YouTube video. Doug, thanks so much for having us. This has been such a pleasure. Don't call Doug because you're mad about your premium, okay? Let me just clarify this. If you're mad about your premium, please do not call Doug because he'll never come back on a webinar that I host ever again.
I appreciate it, man. Have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. So Phil, in our last 10 minutes together, I wanted to talk through how you, as a buy-side or a sell-side broker with a background in insurance, how you're advising your clients to think about how to think about insurance when they're selecting an aircraft for their mission. Because typically insurance does not come into play until far into the transaction. In the event that something is transacting hands, how are you talking to your clients about insurance, and how are you using kind of that insurance broker hat to help them walk through that?
Well, the thing that we do is it depends on the type of aircraft that I'm talking to a customer about. If it's going to be an owner flown airplane, insurance gets talked about day one. The qualifications of the client that wants to buy, their pilot qualifications, their age. A lot of that comes into play because we can stop and not waste their time and our time and Shannon's time and Doug's time if they're 75 years old and they're wanting to buy a CJ3 plus, unless they're planning on hiring a pilot. So we try to bring that conversation in owner flown airplanes day one. If it's going to be a professionally flown airplane, it probably comes in later. But if it's the first time airplane choice, we start looking about, thinking about qualifications for pilots you're going to hire, training you're good pilot's going to hire, getting a slot in at a training organization. Those are the things that come in. So yeah, it happens a little bit later, but it doesn't get skipped over till the very end like a lot of times it used to happen that way, especially in the market. The previous 5 years has been very, very difficult. It's gotten a little bit easier in the last year and a half. And it looks good for the remainder of this year and next year, except for the losses that we've had in the industry.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good outlook. Let's talk through kind of someone who's stepping up or stepping down. So someone who's moving from maybe single engine turboprop to a light jet, or maybe from a piston to turbine. What type of considerations should they plan for? So like as we think about it from a holistic standpoint, obviously this is about insurance, but I think that insurance is one key fundamental foundational issue. How are you advising clients as they're kind of moving up or maybe even down in the spectrum of aircrafts?
So the moving up is usually the most of the time what we're talking about. And then we always try to separate it. Are we talking about an owner flown airplane or a professionally flown airplane? With the owner flown airplanes, I always ask the first question is, what type of ratings do you have and how much experience do you have? If you've been flying a TBM and you want to go to a CJ2, that's a pretty easy transition. Do you have any jet time? Those kind of things. Just start thinking about that so they can start planning their planning. Finding the airplane could be the easiest part, getting them qualified to fly the airplane. Expectations of for the first 100 hours or the first 50 hours or the first year, you're going to want to hire a co-pilot or a professional pilot to fly with you until you get your experience level up. We do work on that. And then we talk about the differences that go with difference in maintenance, difference in inspection cycles, the differences in just storage, and what the insurance companies are going to be looking for when we go back to talking about insurance as far as qualifications and expectations and where they're going to travel with the airplane.
Yeah, no, I think that's very helpful, especially for folks that are maybe new to that aircraft type, right? Maybe not necessarily new to owning an aircraft, but maybe new to that aircraft type.
Absolutely.
Walk me through kind of corporate buyers. So we have owner flown buyers, which we know that insurance is arguably much more complicated for owner flown aircraft. What about corporate buyers? Is this something that a corporate buyer really needs to have top of mind, or is it something that kind of we'll let your management company handle that and your rate is what it is? It's the best that you're going to get.
I think it always warrants a conversation because we start talking about, as you were talking about with Doug, as far as age. The older the airplanes, the more expensive they are. The type of airplane that it is can vary that quite a bit, but it's not as much of a deep discussion if they're using it for pure corporate transport. Whether you're buying your first King Air, whether you're buying a Challenger 300, or whether you're buying your first Gulfstream, it's pretty straightforward. It all depends on the pilot you're hiring and where you're going and the environment you're going to operate out of.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I think when do you, from a transaction standpoint, so one thing that I talk to a lot of people about is assembling your transaction team, right? So it's not just typically, especially as you move up the spectrum, it's not just like a broker. You have usually a broker and there's a tax person and an attorney, and if you're not paying cash, a finance person, and insurance is one of those people in the transaction team, especially owner flown, but even happens in corporate flown as well. If you're going to self-manage or something like that, when do you typically want the insurance being introduced to the transaction team?
I would say that probably in the transaction area, as far as when we're going into, we've had an LOI, it's been accepted. I always ask the questions, you know, tax first, financing second, lawyer third, insurance fourth, escrow recommendations fifth, And then pre-buy locations kind of in that same area as we're talking about from LOI going into the actual purchase agreement. It's kind of my list of things that I go through in my checklist.
Yeah, no, that's useful advice there. I think the last thing that I would like to touch on is how do you handle insurance when you're selling an airplane? So if you're on the sell side, right?
Mhm.
So we talked a lot about on the buy side. When you're on the sell side, is it basically like you just tell your insurance agent, hey, we're going to sell it? Is there a period of time where somebody's insured, the aircraft's double insured from the previous owner? Like obviously escrow does the little stamp and puts it in the box, right?
Right.
That, or I guess it's not technically anymore. They went digital like 6 months ago, but the conventional stamp it in the box.
Sure.
How do you help your sellers coach through the insurance, or is it even something they think about?
No, we usually always talk to them about it because it's in the transaction now that the FAA requires you to send the old registration back. So when we're closing and we're handing over possession of the airplane, we always say, take the
Oh, we lost Phil. He's back. Hang on. All right, we're back. We were talking about registration.
Yeah. So once we pull that registration, it's time to cancel the insurance. We always ask those questions of, and this is what Doug and them would say, as long as there exists an insurable interest by one party or the other, that party needs to be insuring the airplane at that particular time. So the minute that ownership changes hands, the current owner has no insurable interest in it at all, so he needs to cancel his insurance because there never will technically be double insurance on the airplane. The only person will have an insurable interest unless you loaned them the money to buy the airplane, or you're leasing it with a option to purchase or something. There's all kinds of things that can cause it to be a non-standard transaction. But in a standard transaction, the minute you're paid and they stamp that deal and you move the registration, it's not your problem anymore. You can cancel it at any time.
That's really good advice, and it's important to have somebody on brokerage to help you with that. I think when people try and cowboy transactions, I don't know if you experience this, Phil, but
all the time.
It tends to be real estate guys. And look, this is not throwing shade at real estate people, but in my world, it's the real estate guys that always think that they can do their own deal because they're deal junkies by nature. And they're like, oh yeah, I'll do this. Well, I almost guarantee you they have no idea that when they go to sell or buy about the insurance, unless somebody's telling them. And then usually it means that, oh, I haven't actually even thought about insurance, or, oh yeah, I do need to get insurance figured out, and those kinds of things. What is one thing, Phil, that you wish every prospective buyer that you talk to on a daily basis knew about aircraft insurance that would make your life just so much easier?
Currency requirements in the new airplane that they're going to be purchasing. What could I be doing now if I know I'm going to say get rid of my Cessna 182 and buy a Kodiak or a Caravan, or I'm going to go to a Pilatus? Knowing what that is, and have already set those things up when they know they're ready to pull the trigger and buy an airplane. Just have that set in place, because especially training and factory standpoint, it is extremely difficult to get that done in a quick, timely manner.
Yeah, no, that is super useful. Well, Phil, thank you so much for coming on Airtime.
My pleasure. Sorry for the transaction or the interference. I'm not sure. I had a plugged-in line and a Wi-Fi line, and none of them seem to be working stable today. So I apologize for that to the group.
It's all right. That's why we need Elon Musk to hurry up with Starlink and make it a little more affordable.
Absolutely.
Phil, if somebody wants to find out more about you or more about what you do at Central, where should they go? Where should they find out more about you?
You bet. I'm on LinkedIn as well, but also at central.aero is our website, and you can contact me directly through there.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thanks, Phil. And thanks for your insight. This was really great.
You bet. My pleasure.
All right, everybody, it is 1:59, which means that this stream is going to end in about 30 seconds because we respect your time at Airtime. We do not have boring webinars, and we end on time. We don't go long. That is what you can always count on. We're going to have the next Airtime in a couple of months. Probably look for it sometime in August or September. If you have advice on or topics that you want to talk about or hear about, you want to learn from an expert. Maybe it's somebody like we heard from Doug today, who is an underwriter. I've never talked to an insurance underwriter. I learned so much today. So if you want to learn more about the world of aircraft transaction or aircraft ownership, drop me a line. I'm on LinkedIn. Preston Holland, just look me up. You can find me there. I'm on Twitter, Preston Holland 6. You can look me up at prestigefinance.com. Drop me a note. Let me know what you want to hear about, and I will be sure to add that to the list for the next Airtime. On behalf of GLADA, I am Preston Holland, and we will see